If you have a true scary story you want to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I have always seen things around that may be ghosts or spirits, usually cats, for example. I'll call my 3 cats in for dinner and see a 4th cat come in with them who quickly vanishes. Or I'll see one sleeping in the room near me and look to see who it is, and there's no cat there. There's phantom meowing, etc. And I seem to see shadows out of the corner of my eye more than other people do, and hear my name being called frequently when no one is there. But I never thought it was definitely paranormal until we moved here, about a year and a half ago, and my mom started experiencing things too. We both hear heavy footsteps throughout the house, the back door slamming shut when it was closed and locked with no one in the room. My 4-year-old brother's toys going off in the middle of the night, and random crashing and slamming noises. One day I was walking past the bathroom and heard my brother whispering, "Gotta hide, gotta hide," and moving things around, so assuming he was getting into something. I turned on the light, and he wasn't there. I looked behind the door and under the sink, and no one was in there. Then I heard his laugh outside in the front yard, and I got a weird, sick feeling. It was as though something was imitating his voice in the bathroom. Several times I've heard him running through the living room and crying and run in to comfort him, but he's not there. The other day I saw him reaching up to grab the hot pan off the stove, and I rushed in yelling for him to get away from the stove, only to hear him laughing behind me. I turned to see him sitting in the chair in the living room. Another time I heard my cat meowing at the back door in the laundry room, and as I went to let him in, I heard the door slam, like usual, and saw a tall woman in pajamas run across the doorway and into the corner of the room. I ignored it, and went to open the door for the cat, and out of the corner of my eye I could see the woman pressing herself into the corner, like she was trying to stay out of my way in the small space. The other day, my mom picked me up from work and we were rounding the corner to our house. My mom saw a little kid in our yard. I didn't see them, but I looked around to be sure and there was no one. But as I was walking up the steps of the front porch, I felt a child's hand grab my leg. I turned around thinking my brother wanted me to hold his hand up the stairs, and saw him playing on the opposite side of the yard. No one was near me. Now, the story that made me want to submit this happened last night. I was in my room with my cat, Pumpkin, and we heard my brother's barnhouse toy going off in the living room. Usually it does 3 animal sounds, about 3 seconds apart, and then a 10-second song. This time I heard the sheep sound, off in the living room as usual, and then a few seconds later the cow noise coming from under my bed. Pumpkin and I both jerked our heads to the foot of the bed in confusion, and then the rooster goes off, still under my bed. We stare at each other in disbelief. As the song started playing, still under the bed, Pumpkin's ears flicked back and forth as though she could not comprehend what was happening, and she glanced from me to the bed, to the door leading to the living room, as I rushed to the foot of the bed and started looking for the toy barn. I moved the cat beds, moved my bed away from the wall, lifted the box spring. It wasn't there, and there was nowhere that it could fit inside of my room where I couldn't be able to see it. As the song stopped, I looked back at Pumpkin and she was still glancing around the room. I went to pat her back and tell her it was okay, and I heard the animal noises start up again in the living room. I looked out my door. The barn was sitting in the middle of the floor, where it had been all day. Usually I would just brush it off, but since my mom started hearing things, I've been paying more attention. And now my cats are reacting to it, so I can't just deny that it's happening anymore. We are planning to move soon to be closer to the rest of our family, so hopefully whatever lives here leaves my cats alone until then. Sorry if this isn't a super interesting story, but thank you for reading anyway. And if you choose to use it for a video, thank you for that too. I really love your videos, and I listen to them while I draw and do chores and stuff. Thank you for your awesome content. Thank you for submitting the story. Hello all. I recently made a post of an experience I had in astral projection, which I'll link here. I haven't written any real experiences beside that one, and after the feedback I received from it, it encouraged me to be open about other real-world situations that have happened to me. I tend to stay away from relating these kinds of experiences because they aren't very measurable in our current understanding of the world. I shy away from relating these experiences for a fear of what people may think. After posting to Astral Projection, though, I felt a sense of relief in doing so, and the community has been very kind and resourceful. To give background on paranormal experiences in my life, there have been a handful of instances that have happened to me that will forever stick with me. I do feel I have an innate connection to otherworldly phenomena. I don't say this to sound arrogant or pompous, I say this to reveal that I consider myself open to things beyond our realm of understanding, and that by being open to it, experiences or things are able to manifest. While previous experiences had happened before this specific one, this one in particular had me shook. I've thought about keeping specific details a little under wraps. I don't know if it's right that I speak about things that make people want to check it out, or inquire with the property that could be tied back to me and would give them a headache. I'm not saying anyone would do this, I just would like to keep my relationship in good standing. This is also in part because it is tied to my career. I will do my best to give as much detail as possible without compromising this. It was December in Cincinnati, Ohio, in 2018 on the verge of 2019. During this time period, I was contracting at a particular place that necessitated staying a year in Cincinnati. I was living at a spot on Mount Adams. Cincinnati was an absolutely gorgeous city. I truly loved it there. It had a small city feel with a very nice community of people that were passionate about the city. For me, it felt like so much energy had been around a long time, long before our current society exists there today. I say this to let people know that there was something about Cincinnati that, for the first time in my life, had given me the most paranormal experiences I have ever had from living anywhere else. I've lived in Texas, Chicago, New York City, Indiana. To be honest, all of these places I have lived haven't offered me paranormal experiences in the way that visiting a couple of other places have. The first experience I had was at someone's home in New Jersey, and another experience in a condo in Sarasota. Around 9 p.m., I arrived at a coworker's spot, which was also located on Mount Adams, in a different location. It was a holiday party where a group of us gathered. It was an apartment complex, and their unit was located on the top third floor of a building. I looked into the building recently through the city's tax records, and the report gives the insight that it was built in the 1920s. The internals of the building that I saw heading up to their unit reflected renovations that probably occurred in the 70s or 80s. Rundown carpet lined the hallways and stairs. Doors had been replaced with cheap orange-colored laminate oak siding. Banisters had been repainted to match the doors, and some of the building had left Art Deco wood engravings from the time it was built in corners that lived on. The interior of the unit had been the most renovated, with hardwood flooring, updated kitchen appliances, lighting, electrical sockets, etc. As soon as you walked into the unit, a large living room opened up with a window to the left that viewed the street. To the right, you could see an entryway that led into the kitchen. a small hallway to the left of the kitchen that led to the bathroom and eventually the bedroom. About 10 people in total showed up to this holiday party, and it never felt overly cramped. It was probably around 800 square feet the units sat around. As time moved on, we found ourselves in different locations of the units to interact with people. I eventually made it into the kitchen and sat at a table and had a conversation with someone. It felt damp in there. Something was off about it. And the longer I sat there, the more I began to wonder what it was about this kitchen that was so odd. My eyes wandered around until they eventually landed on a dark door that had a curtain over a glass window on the edge of the room. The hostess came into the kitchen and I said to her, "I've been staring at that door. Where the hell does that go?" She replied along the lines of, "It leads down into the basement." I stood up and walked over to it, and in the process she said something to the effect of, "But don't go out there. We don't use that door. The people who own the building told us not to use it because it leads to a stairwell they haven't updated, and it could be unsafe." I said, "Well, what's in the basement?" She said, "There's a laundry room down there, but I never use it. I go to the laundromat. If you want to go down to the basement, you can go out the front door and it'll lead you down there too." I wasn't going to let this fly. Anytime I'm put in a position where I'm beholden to someone else telling me what to do, I feel compelled to defy what I interpret as a power trip. I also had a couple of beers in me. "Nah, come on," I responded and made a move to unlock the door. As I was doing this, there was a girl who shared the same curious personality as mine in the living room. I let her know from the kitchen, "Hey Rachel, check this out. There's a weird door in the kitchen that goes to the basement." She walked in and it was game on. The hostess responded, "If anything happens to you going down that stairwell, it is not my fault." I turned the knob and slowly opened the door. It was clear that it hadn't been used in a long time. Paint from the door peeled itself off the weather insulation and popped open. I looked out before I physically made any moves to check the structural integrity of the wooden staircase and the surrounding area. It was dark in there. I opened up the flashlight on my phone and looked around. Old gray-stained wood was what the entirety of this stairwell was made of. Brick lined the walls, and as far as the degradation of the wood staircase structure, I didn't see anything to cause extreme caution. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have continued. The wood felt fairly sturdy. We entered slowly and started a slow, precautious descent down the flight of stairs. After about 6 steps, you would hit a landing, turn the corner, and visually could see the next 6 stairs to the next landing. Upon reaching the first floor, the wooden staircase structure ended and a concrete staircase structure began in a straight line. At the end of the concrete staircase was a rickety white door not fully closed. I remember feeling a surge of energy hitting me and looking at Rachel. We exchanged intuitive knowledge of what the other one was thinking without any words. We made it down the steps to the door and slowly pushed it open. The open room was dimly lit by a single light bulb, uninhabited by any shade covering. It hung by an extension cord from the ceiling with an operative on-off by means of a beaded metal pull cord. Indeed, this was the laundry room, as a side-by-side washer-dryer sat next to each other on the right side of the room. Small slits of a window that led out to the street side of the building about a foot above my head lived above the washer and dryer. A small round table and a chair on top of a ragged old outdoor carpet lived in front of the washer and dryer just off center of the above light bulb. From a distance, I noticed a pad of paper lightly sprinkled with dirt and dust on the table and a worn-down classic sharpening pencil next to it. We approached the table, and I looked at the pad of paper. I reached down and picked it up, and I pulled it closer to my eyes. The only faint words written on this pad of paper and pencil was the sentence, "Don't look behind you." written in all lowercase and seemingly dulled from the amount of time it had been down there. My initial reaction was along the lines of, "That's funny. I would do the same thing to put people on edge in a place like this." I showed Rachel, and she likewise laughed it off, but we both instinctually looked around us and behind us. We knew that there was more to this area than the eye could see, but we didn't have a clue as to how big. Above us, we noticed fluorescent bulbs in a track that followed each other and eventually disappeared off into the darkness. We searched the room and found a light switch next to another staircase, the one residents actually used. We turned it to the on position, and one by one, these fluorescent bulbs lit up in succession, turning the darkness into view. What resulted was the fullness of the laundry room. A long corridor at the end of the laundry room that led to an opening up to another room the same size as this room at the end of the corridor. All in a straight line. The best way I can describe this from an overhead view is the shape of a dumbbell on a floor plan map. In total, I would say from the far end of the laundry room to the far end of the other room was about 50 yards in length. I looked at her, she looked at me, and we knew what we had to do. She grabbed my arm and interlaced hers in mine. We began to slow and, in tandem, pace past the edge of the laundry room and into the narrower corridor. There were wooden structures that had been built that worked as private storage areas for residents on either side and lined this hallway and created this shape. They were probably 5 by 5 units, and each side had around 7 or 8 units. The doors on them varied from solid pieces of wood to metal chain link. Some had cheap metal locking mechanisms that utilized padlocks for security, and some weren't in use. We darted our eyes into the chain link units and saw baskets filled with old clothes, rolled carpets, cardboard boxes. Besides the eeriness of the corridor and the setting, nothing about these storage units took our attention for more than a few seconds. We made it to the other end of this portion of the corridor. The room now opened up, as it was in the laundry room. At the very opposite end of the room from where we now stood was a relatively new-built standalone wooden storage locker. It lacked a padlock. I say newly built because the wood didn't look as aged. It looked fresher than anything through the corridor. Off to the right side of the room was another room. It was about 10 foot by 10 foot and lacked a door. We both looked at each other, and we walked over. I could feel the tension in her start to stiffen on my arm. We got to the edge of the room and stood underneath the doorway. I felt an immediate drop in temperature. My initial instinct about this drop in temperature was something wasn't right in this room, but I quickly shook it off and logically told myself in my head that it was just old and lacked insulation. The room reflected it because it was all concrete walls and had the same above-ahead windows. The floor was littered with junk. We couldn't even walk into it without fear of a rusty nail, wood scraps, a broken toilet, half-built or half-destroyed wooden furniture structures, a lone ratty old baseball hat set on top of the left windowsill. It was blue and orange and was of the NY Mets. Rachel leaned into me and said, "It just got colder." It felt like that was enough for both her and I. We had done our exploration. We began making our way over to the corridor in pursuit of making it back to the unit. By this time, a couple of other people had made their way into the laundry room at the far end and stood there calling out our name. We responded that we were coming back. I don't know what it was, but my intuition told me that we were not done here. I stopped walking while simultaneously gripping her arm a little tighter. I said, "Wait." I turned around, moving her in tow. I locked eyes on the standalone wooden storage structure on the opposite end of the room from where we stood at the corridor. Again, we both looked at each other and intuitively knew. We began a slow, laborious walk over to this structure. Something was off-putting about this basement, and inherently we knew it. Inch by inch, I could feel her start to tense, and I recognized the same in myself by making me self-aware. At about 4 feet away, the tension was palpable both physically and mentally. I very slowly started to reach my free arm forward. I was aiming for the door handle. My heart was racing and she was trembling. The vastness of this wooden structure started to overwhelm my peripheral vision. My hand made it onto the frame. I got to around 5 inches of this door handle with my hand. Bang, bang, bang. The reverberation from the physical impact shook the entire structure, rippling the wood. The sound waves coming from the impact shook me to my core. Instinct took over, and I took off as fast as our body would carry us down the corridor to the laundry room. The people in the laundry room screamed and took off up the concrete staircase in pursuit of the unit. There was absolutely no time to look back at what had just happened before we reached the laundry room. Once we did, in a panic, I spun around to look back and see what had unfolded since the sprint back. Silence. The door still stood in the same position. From this vantage point, the structure looked menacing in narrow view down the long corridor, lit under the fluorescent lighting. Before Rachel made it to the concrete staircase, I yelled, "Wait." I turned to look at her briefly. She looked at me aghast, like I was out of my mind. I swiveled back to the structure. "Who's down there?" I yelled at it. At this point, the only logical thing that could come to my mind was that someone from the party knew we were down here, and in order to get their rocks off, decided it would be funny to enter that structure from a different entry point to the basement and wait for us to check it out. There was no response. I yelled out, "I know you're messing with us." Nothing. Rachel said emphatically, "No one's down there, let's go." "Seriously?" I responded. "We have to go back down there." It took a moment. No other words were exchanged, just the silence of this basement. She agreed. She didn't need convincing, and I wasn't about to lay that on someone. Before the journey back, we yelled up the staircase to one of the people that was in the laundry room to please come down to watch us from there. She hesitantly agreed and came down. Still convinced someone from the party was in that wooden structure, I began walking with more certainty and less hesitancy. I reached the end of the corridor, all of my physical senses now on the absolute brink. The only thing that stood between me and that door now was my own courage, or lack thereof. I reached a tipping point and stopped, and stared at it, all the while waiting for Rachel to get closer to me. Tension was again palpable. I jutted my arm out quickly and without thought would only slow me down. I yanked the door open and jumped back as far as possible. Nothing. Not a single physical object was behind that door. The only thing there was the back concrete wall that the wooden structure butt up against. There was absolutely no way in or out of this thing from any other way but through this door. The only other thing was a drain that you would find in a shower that had a metal plate over it with the small holes in a pattern throughout laid in the floor. I looked at Rachel, she looked at me. We both went pale white. I turned to look back into the wooden structure and was absolutely dumbfounded, shocked, and lacking words. "What's in it?" yelled the person down the hall from the laundry room. Rachel and I both turned to look and replied at the exact same time, "Nothing." I looked back and made sure of it. Nothing. I looked around this room. There was absolutely no way someone could have made it into this room besides the laundry room area that we came in from the concrete staircase, or the staircase the complex deemed safe to come down. We slowly inched backwards, hitting the passage through the corridor, turned around, and worriedly made it back to the unit, all the while looking behind us. And that's one of the most insane things that has ever happened to me in this paranormal world that I will never be able to explain on this physical plane of existence. Before I wrote this, I texted Rachel about this, as I have many times in the past, to confirm this actually happened. that there was no way in which she banged on the door without me seeing it. Her response has always been the same. I can 100% say that all this did happen, and it was not me. My sister purchased a home built in 1923. I automatically loved the little 2-bedroom stucco home. It had a full creepy basement, including a coal bin for the furnace that had been updated to steam heat. It had a fireplace and built-in bookcases, a tiny door in the hallway near the bathroom and bedrooms that was made specifically for an old candlestick telephone, and a little door kept it out of view with small decorative cut holes so you would hear it when it rang. Then you would place it in the nook to talk above it. I don't even know why I said it to this day, but I told my sister that I always felt her large living room and dining room felt happy. She asked what I meant, and finally I just envisioned that at some point, the rooms had a group of happy friends in it talking. Maybe playing cards or some sort of a club. Lots of laughing and talking. I had spent the night with her often since my university was way closer than where I lived, and we could talk or go eat that way and I could crash there. One day, a girl I had a class with asked if there was any way I could take her home. I inquired where she lived, only to find that it was a hop, skip, and a jump from my sister's house, so I told her this. Going there, she said she'd known a lady who lived on that street. The more specifics we talked about, the more I realized it was the same house. So I drove right past it, and she pointed to her house, saying that either an aunt or grandmother had once lived there. She said that she had a card club that met all the time, and many happy memories were made there. I felt like saying I had seen and heard them in my mind's eye, but it would have sounded weird. I don't care about that anymore, so I'm telling you all. It was like some energy of them was still in the home, and it was always warm and fun, but yet the basement was creepy. One odd thing did happen there, and I figure it was a ghost or a demon voice trying to scare me, and oh yeah, it did. My sister was a nurse and was working second shift. I had a key and stayed overnight a lot, as I said. So sometimes I would make a run for some food at a nearby Taco Bell for a taco salad that I'd be craving. My sister's cat Sheba had to be the prettiest and sweetest cat in the world. She was a Norwegian forest cat with gold eyes and a striped mackerel silver coat. She was so sociable and sweet, and I talked to her and said, "I'm going just down the street to the Taco Bell to the drive-thru to get a salad and I'll be right back." I was right at that back door where I parked nearby, keys in hand, and Sheba was right by the door. She turned her face up to me in a sweet little voice. I heard, "Okay?" I couldn't move out of fear and disbelief. And then I closed and locked the door, gunned to my car out of there, and got my food and feared going back. I was petrified. That can't be the cat. A ghost? Worse, some kind of demon? I felt that I was just shaking in fear. It took everything in me to return. I've never taken a drug in my life, and I assure you that's the truth. I probably would think that someone was a bit off if they told me that, but it happened. And it scares me to think of it many years later. Hi. I, 22, female, have always been really sensitive to the paranormal. I grew up in a house that was very active. My siblings and I loved the paranormal and loved to go ghost investigating, or just go to abandoned buildings to explore, and we never really had big experiences until after the old rec center. I was having issues with my mom at home. We weren't getting along, and it was starting to get physical, so I moved in with my older sister for a few months, And during this time, my whole life and relationship to the paranormal has changed, and is definitely stronger. My older sister, let's call her A, she wanted to do a creepy photo shoot at an abandoned rec center. I think it was built in the 70s but got shut down for unknown reasons. We went and bought some white dresses and did my makeup like dark rings under my eyes, but anyway, we made it to the rec center and we had to go through a fence with a hole cut through it and find a door or window that wasn't boarded up or locked with metal bars. We finally found a broken door and snuck our way inside. We turned our phone flashlights on and started exploring to find a good place to take creepy pictures. As soon as we walked in, the air felt heavy, and I felt a lot of dread. But I just put it off because we needed these pictures. We ventured in, climbing over years of garbage and crumbled ceiling that had fallen. We stopped to put our stuff down so I would pose in a doorway to a hallway when my foot slipped, and I fell. I was dumb because I was wearing sandals, not real shoes, and because it would be easier to Photoshop out than a whole shoe, but I looked on the ground to see what I had slipped on, and lucky me, it was a piece of a Ouija board. The only word on it was no. The sides were burned. I started giggling in a panic and told A. She walked over and her face dropped. She grabbed my hand and we walked to a different spot. We went around taking pictures in different spots, like the old pool that was on the top floor, and very hard to climb to. We made it to a staircase that was cleared out, like it was dirty or covered in trees or anything, which was kind of unsettling for some reason. I stood at the top, and I went to go on all fours so it looked like I was crawling up the stairs, I guess. I was doing it right because A started laughing in excitement and told me to stop because I was actually scaring her. It was so good, and then I heard someone whisper my name from under me on the staircase. I panicked and jumped towards A, and I told her that I heard someone whisper my name. She told me to shut up because I was scaring her, and she asked if I wanted to go down there to the basement, all the way to the bottom of the 4-floor rec center. By the way, the whole layout of this rec center was really strange. Like, the pool was on the top floor, and there was a look down to the hot tops right below the pool, but the thing is, it was like a cliff. Like, there was no glass and no place to put glass, so it was a little strange. And the supposed to be hot tubs were 2 floors below the pool. And there was 3 of them, like right next to each other. And when we had ventured down there later on in the night, we found 3 weird rooms under the pool. They had the plastic strips on it, kind of like a walk-in fridge or freezer or a meat locker. And it was just a plain concrete room. There was nothing else in there. We thought maybe it was a sauna, but there was no place for the steam to come out or to go. Anyway, sorry. I told A that I didn't want to go to the basement, because I had a really bad feeling. She agreed and we grabbed our stuff, and started to head out of the building when my dress got caught on something, so it pulled me back. I cursed, looked down, and I could see the skirt to my dress being pulled back. I wasn't by anything for it to get stuck on something. I started waving my hand around it, thinking maybe a thread got stuck on something, but no, it wasn't. I started screaming and ran out. A was right behind me. We went home, looked at our cool pictures, which I'm still proud of, and a few hours later, A came up to me smiling and said that she wanted to go back tonight and explore the other half. I knew that she meant the rec center. I was nervous, but I said sure, and told her that I'm going to shower and get the makeup off, and when I was showering, the curtain had gotten pulled to the side like something was peeking at me. I laughed in nervousness, and thought that it was just A picking on me, trying to scare me, but I washed the soap out of my hair when the curtain was pushed all the way. I screamed and started yelling. A came in running and asked what had happened, so I told her. We were kind of freaked out, but we pushed it aside, saying that maybe the wind blew it open. Later that night, we picked up my little sister V and A's best friend L. We brought flashlights this time, and when we were adventuring around, we went to the gym, and there was a huge pentagram burned into the floor. We walked around it to a door on the other side of the gym, and these rooms were weird, and we couldn't figure out what these rooms were used for. They were thick concrete rooms with the ceiling so far up that I couldn't see it, but the door was a small passage, not even 3 feet tall. I had to crawl on my hands and knees to even get into the rooms. I looked around the room to make sure it was clear so V could join me, and I noticed there was no other way into this room. So I told the others, and I told them that something felt off about this place and these rooms. When I said that, I heard something in the corner shuffle, like moving around. I hurried and flashed my light to the corner when I saw an old lady curled up. I gasped, panicked, and hurried and crawled out of there. I could hear her crawling behind me. I didn't want to scare V, so I didn't scream. I just looked at A and L and said, "Someone was in there, dude." They hurried and bent down to look, and of course no one was in there. We were kind of scared, but we kept on going because we were stupid. Eventually we found a staircase that led outside and downstairs, and when we were walking on the stairs, I felt a lot of comfort, like a huge hug. I was really confused, of course, but I wasn't going to complain. It was comforting after all. Once we made it to the basement, the whole vibe was super dark and heavy, and everything was burned from an old fire that almost destroyed the building. We kept walking and found the old laundry room. There was a mattress in there and a suitcase that had clothes in it, and a blanket. We were scared that someone was sleeping, and we didn't want them to get scared and try to protect themselves, so we called out just saying that we were sorry to intrude, and that we were just adventuring, but that we would leave them alone. No answer. So we kept walking. I was in the very back of the group, and I heard someone behind me whisper, "It's okay, Whit." I hit Elle and asked if she heard that, but no one did. I kept hearing footsteps and whispers. When we made it to the main location of the fire, and we found small pentagrams carved into the wood down there, but the weird thing is that they were the only things that were not touched by the fire. Which is impossible, because everything was pitch black burned. I had a strong feeling to touch one, and before I knew it, my hand floated up to the little star, and my finger traced the grooves. And let me tell you, as soon as I did that, I didn't remember anything else. I came back to when we were in the car to leave. After this night, my whole family has been affected by whatever followed me home. My best friend at the time was also affected, like not just paranormal stuff, like mental stuff. Our thoughts were super dark. One time when my friend was asleep, she woke up on her mom's floor, and her mom was restraining her. My friend came into her mom's room at 4 a.m. with a huge kitchen knife and tried to stab her own mother. I will admit that I almost took my own life, and my brother's. I would look at him and get so mad. I didn't understand why, but one day he was sleeping on the couch with his baby girl when I found myself grabbing a pillow, and I was putting it on his face. He's a really deep sleeper, and he didn't wake up. What snapped me out of this was my baby niece crying. I picked her up and went outside to clear my head, when I felt a warm, comforting hand on my shoulder. I've done a lot of investigating and found out that this warm entity came from the rec center, and he also followed me home to protect me. I still have him here over 6 years later. Anyway, I tried to figure out his name with spirit boxes and stuff like that, but he doesn't know his name. But he does know that he did pass at the rec center, so I googled any deaths at this rec center, and sure enough, I found a teen that was running on the roof with his friends having fun. He didn't see the end of the building and fell off and passed away. They didn't mention his name because he was a minor, but I call him my buddy, and he's my guardian angel. He helped me fight off this really dark entity but it's way too long of a story, and I just wanted to tell this part because it was creepy and unbelievable. Most of the time, I still doubt myself that it was real. Thank you, Raven, for reading my story. I appreciate you. And remember, everyone, you matter, and you have a purpose here. So that, my friends, was a collection of some chilling paranormal stories. Paranormal stories, excuse me, are where my channel started. I started doing paranormal stories back in 2019 for the 1 month of 2019 that I did content. And as such, they've always just kind of been a staple in my channel. I always enjoy them. I don't really have any paranormal experiences to share, so it's always nice to have these experiences from listeners. In this case, 3 from listeners, 1 from Reddit, but it is always nice to have these stories from people, these paranormal experiences, these encounters and retellings, because in my opinion, they are just really good and creepy. And of course, there's this side that's like, oh, you get to think about the other side, I guess. I don't know. I'm explaining that really stupidly. I'm not trying to, but it's just like, they're good, creepy stories, and it gets you thinking, and it gets you, I don't know, creeped out. That's why you guys are here, right? I do scary stories. You like scary stories. Paranormal stories are scary. Ergo, A equals B equals C. Transitive properties. You know how it works. If you did enjoy these stories, please do hit that like button underneath the video, the one that looks like a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy scary stories like this, other scary stories, past life stories, internet stories, glitch in the matrix stories, which are probably the most popular ones on my channel, consider subscribing, hitting that subscribe button, as that will get you, I was gonna say a front row ticket, but like, are there rows on YouTube? I don't know. If you subscribe and hit the bell icon, you can be one of the first to see the videos whenever they go live, and that's kind of like the front row. I guess that would make like patrons and members the VIP section. Whatever. Anyways, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to get more content like this. Leave me a comment if you have any thoughts or want to just talk and say hi, you know. Joining Patreon and membership gets you early access. That's that VIP box. Yeah. It's as little as $1 a month to get early access. So it also helps support the channel. It really does. So, yeah. Or there's the super thanks, which is just a donation, I suppose, a tip to the channel. It doesn't really get you anything extra. It's just a cool thing that you can do if you want. It's a crowdfunding, I guess, if you will. And I think that's about it. I do have a merch store. If you want to go to look at the merch store, you can. You don't have to. I got cool stuff there, though, down in the description. Yeah, hopefully you're having a beautiful week so far. Beautiful day. Hope I do see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.